Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the BBP podcast. This is episode number 3 of our podcast series. Today, we are joined with Josh Dittrich. My name is Blake Willing. I am the host of the podcast along with my co-host, Takashi.
Hey, guys.
Josh, what's going on, man? Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely.
This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks to have you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for having us in your house where we're shooting. But yeah, for the people that don't know who you are, just give it a little bit of a background about who you are, what you do, that kind of stuff.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks guys for being here in my guest office, my little suite. I've been an entrepreneur for the last number of years, and for me that's just about helping others achieve their mission through the businesses that I'm building or helping others build. But prior to that, I've been in the e-commerce space for about 15 years and helped grow and eventually sell a couple of businesses that allow me to really play Monopoly a little bit, looking at opportunities that I can invest, things that I can buy. And investing, I mean, my human capital, which would be like my time and effort and skills, but also my financial money to be able to invest in others that are trying to achieve things maybe as I once had earlier on in my 20s as I was seeking and just didn't have a lot of peers or mentors that really guided and showed me. So I'm trying to become that in this thought leader Christian space to kind of segue. I'm a family man, 5 kids, wife. I lived in St. Michael for 14 years, but I've been in Minnesota for about 20. And so these are my roots.
Awesome. Yeah. So for people that aren't really familiar with e-commerce, can you kind of explain what e-commerce is? I mean, it's online business, but there's got to be more to it than that.
Yeah. I mean, you have the internet, and then you have like digital marketing, which would be anything that requires, some version of digital. So search engine ads, Google ads, right? Building website, link building, SEO, that would be traditional digital marketing with branding mixed into email marketing. Well, then the next layer of that is that platform or website sells products. And so since 2010, I've been selling physical products and shipping to end users for, a number of different companies. Prior to side hustle, then a large company I helped grow from 0 to 50 million, and they physically sold water filters. So they had a 20,000 square foot warehouse with physical products this big up to this big. We did drop shipping and learned this idea of Amazon. So it went from digital marketing e-commerce into Amazon as a marketplace inside e-commerce, right? So allowing their platform to be the fulfillment house so entrepreneurs didn't have to build that structure themselves. And so I was fortunate enough to be like, okay, I'm in e-commerce, I understand it, but if I want to go do something on my own, it was nice to be able to leverage their platform. And so one thing led to another to be able to become that as a focus point. And, in 21 sold a couple of different e-commerce brands and exited those.
Wow. So just curious, when you sounds like you start off at opening a business right out of college, or did you working a job? How did you transition to be a business owner right off the bat?
I don't know, Takashi, if I really knew if I wanted that. I didn't know what it looked like. And I wrote a book after I sold my businesses about selling businesses in the process. And I did do a lot of self-reflection. And I think earlier on through that process of writing, I realized that my grandfather worked really, really hard, from the ages of 16 on, and grinded it out. And still to this day, 80 years old, he was an entrepreneur driving truck, still driving now in his 80s.
Wow.
And he did very well for himself. On the flip side, he was always working. And so, older generation, not home and not a lot of hugs, not a lot of I love yous. My father was home on the flip side, fortunately, to do sports and support us in our school efforts and activity. But he was a self-employed business owner, different than an entrepreneur, because he got something started, but the reality was it was a job for himself. And so I looked at entrepreneurship as not something very special because we didn't have a ton of money. And so I'm like, I don't know. So it wasn't something I had in my mind, but until probably the age of 18, I started getting into sales, realized people and relationships tied to making money was important. And I had a really interesting opportunity as a side hustle. So probably 7 years into my selling career, I had an opportunity to start dabbling a little bit, did some eBay and Amazon things. But the real breakthrough for me was a guy that I ended up working for invested and gave me the opportunity to start a side hustle with him. And so that led to exploring his business. And so for the next 7 years, I helped grow from 10 employees up to 100 employees. And that really gave me the confidence and the tools and the knowledge, really an MBA, to go start my own. And so, I would say it's always generally been there, but not until my later, adulthood or earlier adulthood that I was like trying something. But my confidence came working through that experience. And it was a side hustle, again, 18 months of that business before I could leave on my own. So, a stepping stone process. It certainly wasn't, born into something handed to me. It certainly wasn't something that, I always knew I wanted to do, but God opened doors by allowing me to follow some of my passions and skills. So it's been really fun.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. For people that have a business, I know some of the hardest things for growing a business can be finding good quality employees and finding some of the things. I mean, in business, you don't know what you don't know. Like you said, you mentioned earlier before we start filming, being a business owner, it's good because you're on your own. You don't have a boss, but it's also, wow, you're on your own. You don't have a boss. Like you don't have anybody instructing you. How would somebody transition, or how would somebody scale from not really having any employees to finding employees, good quality employees? So like, what is that? Like, what is the scaling process? Because you've obviously done a very fantastic job of scaling. So how would somebody scale like that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think about this still, that question, with everything I start. And it's a tough thing because it's very easy, especially with entrepreneurs that want to follow their passions and have good ideas.
Yeah.
You tend to be all over the place, and you try one, something sticks, right? So when something sticks, you kind of get your framework like, okay, this could work. But the question is whether you start something or have an idea first is, how big could this really be? How big is the market? Okay. And do I have something that I'm doing that can fit into that market and solve a problem? And when you start thinking about that, you say, well, to do that, that would take a lot of dollars. I'd have to go fundraise because I'll never have that, right? So that changes your perspective. Now, the next thing might be, well, I can get this started and scale it because I know that if I do it and do it again, I just need to hire someone and let them run it, right? And so that's kind of the first step, is when everything I do, I'm looking to find a way to like replace myself. So for example, in all the new business development, or the channels or the roles or responsibilities, it's like a 3-week to a 3-month to a 3-year role, depending on the complexity, before I'm going to be able to give it up. Because my hope is I cannot scale unless there's someone doing that activity. And so for me to scale, that means I need to be thinking about big picture and how to remove barriers, how to really see the opportunity to make it most efficient. And so hiring your employee, that first employee, is like, no one's going to think about the business as much as me. No one's going to care about the business as much as me. So there's always that challenge of growing pains. And you're right, like bringing on that first employee is a big milestone. But fortunately for us, like I had practice doing that at another company, hiring people and seeing that work. So I'd go out and find business. We brought on an eBay channel and an Amazon channel. In the very, very beginning, I was manually entering the eBay orders myself.
Oh my God.
And until there was integrations that were very simple. But until then, I was entering orders until we were doing 20 a day. And I was like, hey, boss, I got to bring someone in here. Let's get customer service to do this. I'll write a process. Let's hand it off to them. And so then when that happens, I can go start the next one. And so that freed up my time to be able to like really understand where the opportunity was, as opposed to living in the business. I could work, on the business.
Yeah, that's very
good.
important.
Yep.
So for somebody that has a business already, I mean, you talked about scaling, you talked about growth. A lot of people have these ideas and don't know where to start. Where would a place for somebody to start? I mean, we talked about hiring, we talked about employees, stuff like that. So how does somebody take an idea in their head and actually put it on paper and something into reality?
This is the fundamental question. I've been trying to building this set of rules with that exact thing in mind. So, I'm a bit of an ADD guy. My brain seems to be running a lot, and sometimes when you're having conversations, it's easy to focus on the conversation. But when you're working and doing life, you have lots of ideas, right? And so some of the best ideas come to me when I'm running on my Peloton, and some of the things pop up. And so those ideas are just ideas until you pray and meditate and think on them and study them, and even then, it goes away, it disappears, but maybe it comes back, right? And so pay attention to those ideas that come back. You need to create a system to say, I have lots of ideas. Next thing you know, you write them all down and you're chasing all of them and you do nothing with any of them. So a good segue would be taking that idea, really be critical about what it is and the objective that it would achieve. So for example, I have an idea to start a new business right now. Super simple. What? It's nothing sexy. What does that mean? Well, in this town I live in, I used to be able to take my cardboard right down the road and drop it off for free. Well, they got so busy they had to start charging to drop off cardboard. Well, I have 2 recycling bins and they're always full because I have 5 kids. So that went away from me. And so then over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, cardboard's been building up in my garage. And so I had to do something, 6 months ago to fix that. I had to buy a shredder and start shredding it down. I'm like, now this is time consuming. So I had our housekeeper start doing that, right? Because it was not the best use of my time. But now it's like, I bet I'm not the only person in this 25,000 person community that has all these boxes from shipping online. What if for $50, we'll drive around town and literally all day pick up cardboard and then take it to one place. And so save a bunch of people time and effort, because it's 30 minutes away now to go to the place that's free. 30 minutes there and back. Right? So what would I do? I take that idea and I'm like, is it really a need? Does it solve a problem? Are people willing to pay for it? Okay. Can it scale? Well, what does that mean? More customers, more vehicles. Well, there's limited time. So what is the most amount of money someone can make in a day? Well, if you can do 10, it's only 50 times 10. That's $500. That's still pretty good. Can you do 100 houses in a day? I don't know. That'd be pretty sweet, right? So you start thinking about what would it take to actually scale? Wow, could I do this in every city? Now you've built an idea that can scale, and you just have to work backwards now to resource it, right? So truck, gas, trailer, person. Sweet. I'll go get the first set of orders, and then I'll call you to help me out on weekends, right, Blake?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So what other stuff, like you mentioned that business, that's an awesome business. And I'm sure there's lots of people that are in need of that service. I mean, it's not even just cardboard, like trash.
Yeah.
It's, we're humans. We use stuff. We have consumables that we need to throw away. But what else are you into, man? Like, you've done e-commerce. Okay. You've been really successful in that industry. You talked about this business. What else are you looking at? I know I'm kind of like, I have shiny object syndrome, so I like all these different ideas, but what else are you into?
The funny part is that's actually the reason I went down this path of naming our entity Bright Ventures. So Bright being ideas and ventures being plural, because shiny object syndrome. And for me, it's not about being distracted. It's about pursuing something that I know I can do very well and have fun doing it. And so I'm trying to create a system that allows the shiny objects to become a pipeline of opportunity. And those opportunities then have to be really good at being filtered, right? So filtering those ideas takes time. And you can sit there and look at a wall all day and never come up with anything, or you continue to seek and look and do what you're doing, but noodle on those things. So for example, long story short, very quickly, the other thing I've done 15 years ago, I started giving a guy some money to do flipping. I was the bank. I was a hard money lender. And I gave him $25,000 from a self-directed IRA that I had. So it was retirement money that I moved into a custodian. The custodian said, hey, you can do this and take money out to invest it in whatever you want, but we need to make sure it's compliant. So I've been doing that for a long time. It's worked. Every time I gave him money, he'd send me with 25 grand back plus some interest. Cool. So fast forward 10 years later, we sold our 2 businesses in 21. We had some extra capital, my partner and I, and we said, you know what? What if we took what I was doing before and scaled it? Well, what does that mean? We do more flips. We're not going to flip anything, but we're going to provide the cash to do that. So I started a business called Cashability. In our first year, we did 15 deals. So I personally funded a good chunk of the down payment, personally from the funds of the sale. We partner with another bank and we deliver hard money lending, basically 7 to 14 day close, no payments. We fund the entire purchase of the property plus the entire rehab. And then the flipper pays us back in 6, 9, or 12 months, the entire principal plus interest. So what do you know? It's an interesting business model, and I have 3 other partners, and I am not active in the day-to-day. So it went from something I started as an idea to working in it to now becoming a board member investor. And so, that's an example. That's all happened in the last 2 years. And now I show up once a week on phone calls and just check in to see where things are going.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, you were doing so many things. I mean, sounds like you have multiple businesses going on and what have you, and you must be a busy man, right? But based on what I'm hearing in the community, you're also really juggling that with family, with faith. Can you talk a little bit about how you do everything and do it really, really well?
Man, only God. I mean, fortunately I've been wired a certain way to be able to process fast and decide fast, and sometimes being okay with making mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I've definitely learned some tough lessons, but to be honest, it wasn't always this way. It looks on the outside, right? Sometimes in all of our lives, that we have great things going on or we have tough things going on. And that all comes down to how we let other people see us, right? And so most of the time it's here. I may look cool, calm, and collected here, but inside, no, I'm just kidding. But truthfully, with 5 kids, it's reality. Like for me, I didn't deal with anxiety and depression as a younger kid, but having 5 kids, it became a bit debilitating, like to a point where, having dinner, like my chest would be like, because the noise and the sound and everything going on. And then I was thinking about the business idea, and then my kids would ask me to go help them with a battery for their Xbox controller, and then another kid would need a toy. And so I've had to be really good these last number of years about being intentional. And by that, I mean intentionally disciplined, intentionally creating habits, intentional about my priorities. And so filtering priorities is the same way I filter ideas. Like, can I, do this because I'm passionate about it? B, can I do this because I'm good at it? C, does it help the world? And D, can I make money doing it? But before I go there, it's like, God, my wife, my kids better make sure they have their needs met. And you know how often it is? If I have people in my life that think Josh is great or Josh is helping out, on some ends of it, my wife on the other side will say they get the best version of Josh, but I don't. Yep. And so I'm always struggling with that, right? And so I feel like the idea of a filter is, what does the Bible say? God says, love me and love others. Have no other idols besides, or have other no gods besides me. Do not have any idols. And so sometimes it's easy to be really distracted about success. I've been tricked by that path, and the enemy has a good way of saying, hey, you can make money. Hey, you can choose your own life. But the best part of it is, at the end of the day, it's not ours. We're just stewards of what God gave us. And so I've had to learn that mindset to say, God, thank you for this. We're very blessed, but I'm going to give it back to you. So now, how can I use my gifts? How can I use my talents? How can I serve my family? And how can I serve others that are in business? So that's kind of the evolution, because before, guys, it was all about the dollar. Yep. And so, right. Kids have softened my heart. My wife softened my heart. God's been working on me. And, so on the outside, I mean, sometimes, it's, it looks great, but inside it just takes a lot of thought, and it's a lot of times our own head. So, aligning our heart and our mind and focus on Christ has been a lot of it. Has been the reason.
Wow. Absolutely. Well, we're kind of a little bit short on time, so we're just kind of wrap up with the final 4 questions. And for those at home or watching or listening on Spotify or whatever, we ask these same 4 questions to every single guest member that we have on the show. So first question being, besides the Bible, I know we're Christians, it's a good practice to read God's word and read the Bible. What other book or what other resource have you been involved in, or would you recommend?
Yeah, we kind of joked before that you caught me with my one and only book here with the cover ripped off, that Handbook to Leadership by Ken Boa. Actually, I heard about this in a business Christian group I'm in, and it's one of the cool things where 2 sides of the coin here. One, you have the Bible, and the Bible is inerrant and it's got a lot of wisdom in it. Well, how do you apply wisdom? Well, wisdom is coming from the source of God's knowledge and what's in Scripture. What's nice about this book and how I'm wired is that it relates to every one of us in our interactions with customers and suppliers and ethics and business and morals, right? And right and wrong and treating people with respect. Well, that makes good business. Well, when you put godly principles on top of that, Now you have a foundation for doing business that's in line with God's plan. And so I would say I'm not an avid reader, so that's been a struggle for me. But on the flip side, like books in general, always good business greats, like Good to Great. They studied companies that were good versus great, and they had distinct things that made them different. And so very interesting. One that changed my life is Traction, which is tied to EOS, which is about kind of moving the needle in business. So there's a few things, but I think at the end of the day, my new model is Blinkist, Blikist. So it's like a subscription for audiobooks meets Cliff Notes, right? So now I'm able to like look at all the best books, listen to them, and read them in about 8 minutes. So, for now, I'll let you guys find the rest of them on there.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess we'll roll into the second question here. So I know you talked a little bit about it in our main segment, but how do you keep an edge in your marketplace, or how do you stay competitive apart from like your other people in your market?
I think the easiest way and to do anything in life is to have it modeled to you. Like if you're just doing life and you're not aware of your surroundings, you're going to miss the boat. You're going to miss the boat, and the Holy Spirit's prompting to talk and connect with people. You're going to miss the boat when it comes to just being a good person and a relationship person and a courteous person. But I feel like if you think about the momentum, it's fun when you talk and you know where you're going to go, and you stop and you go, what was I going to say again? Question number two
is, what is your edge? What is your edge?
Talking to people gives you perspective. And so the edge I found is just being willing to be vulnerable and learn and ask questions, like so fascinated. And so what's interesting is I'm not trying to become a specialist. I'm trying to become a specialized generalist entrepreneur. So meaning I have the ability to see business fundamentals in anything, right?
Yep.
That's so staying current means connecting with others that have had success, connect with others that are building, connect with others that have done things I haven't. And I do that through my Christian business groups. I do that through my network of professionals, B, at church. Some guys at church are in business. So I just went and visited one the other day and saw his fantastic facility he started 5 years ago. And like, this is stuff that I know. And so I'm in there learning, asking questions, and aha moments come. So, I think at the end of the day, we all need people. We're made in Christ's image, but for community. And so having that person, iron sharpening iron, Proverbs 27:17 is really for me my best edge. I guess it's the edge of a sword. How about that?
There you go.
Yeah, for those not watching on YouTube, Josh has a tattoo of that proverb on his right arm.
My forearms are big. I think they can see it from the camera.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, third question. I mean, you've talked a little bit about ministry and just now too. Like, is there a ministry that you're involved in, or tell people a little bit about that? It's something you're supporting.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in church obviously has been important in my life, but I think there's a stigma around church, especially now in 2023 and post-COVID, like in some of the decisions around churches and whether or not they should wear masks and all those things. So like when I think about ministry, there's a number of ways. Like one is how you serve, one is how you give, and the other one maybe be how you participate and grow. And so ministry is important in a number of areas. But number one, I just really encourage people to get involved in their home church the best way they can. So like, for example, in my community, there's 50 guys that show up on Tuesday to coffee every Tuesday morning.
Wow. And
guys that are in the same life situation as I am. And inside of that, this is my church creating a safe place for guys to be vulnerable. Amazing. Yes, I give to that ministry. I show up and support that ministry. Why? Because I believe that we need change in this community. Two, personally, this is the one that's transformed my life, is CBMC, Christian Businessmen's Connection. It's been around 100 years, and it's other like-minded entrepreneurs that are building businesses under God's principles. And so, 3.5 hours a month, I'm able to meet with these guys that are doing life and have challenges like I do and really get a chance to relate. Because I tell you what, as much as I like it, Blake and Takashi, you guys don't have 5 kids, but there's a couple guys in my men's group that have 2, 3, and 4, and I hear stories. So those are the opportunities for me to learn and grow, right? Because they're also juggling different things. So
awesome. And then final question. I know lots of people, they don't struggle with it, but it's like kind of a big question.
Yeah.
What is the best business advice, or best general advice that you've ever gotten or given?
Boy, you have to go back and through all the moments of time. A couple of things stand out just because I'm this way. I believe that you can multitask and do a lot. Like, that's great. But it doesn't mean you cannot prioritize. And so one thing I had to learn was, if everything is important, then nothing really is important, right? So like, all right, so yeah, it's important. Well, I have a lot of those. In what order? So that's been helpful because I've had to remind myself, okay, God, what does your word say about this? How does my wife feel about this and think about this? How does it affect my children and my family? Okay, then I can think about, business in some ways. So that's one thing. I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard in the grand scheme of things to always do that right, but it takes practice.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions that we have for today. We're just going to wrap up here. Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening. Check us out on YouTube. Give us a like if you like the video. Share with your friends if you think this would add value to them. Other than that, thank you so much, Josh, again, for letting us shoot in your home. It was an awesome segment that we shot today. So yeah, awesome. We will catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.